What happens when the disaster you're covering is no longer happening somewhere else, but is racing toward your own newsroom, your colleagues' homes, and the community you serve? When wildfires tore through Spokane, tens of thousands of residents were forced to evacuate, and hundreds of structures were destroyed. While firefighters battled an almost unstoppable firestorm, the Spokesman-Review's journalists moved towards the danger to deliver life-saving information, document unimaginable loss, and help their neighbors understand what was happening. Today, we go behind the coverage and behind the curtain with three of the people who produced it. Hi, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. This, of course, is E&P Reports, our weekly vodcast series that explores the people, ideas, and issues shaping the future of news publishing. With me today are two of the newsroom staff, Alexandra Duggan, public safety reporter, Tom Klaus, senior journalist, and, of course, Lindsay Treffy, managing editor of the Spokesman-Review. Welcome to all three of you. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get going, I want to acknowledge the news involving executive editor Rob Curley, who remains on administrative leave pending an outside investigation. E&P has reached out to Aaron Kotarik and, of course, Stacey Coles, and we will include the Spokesman Review's official statement on the episode's landing page. Today's conversation was arranged specifically to examine the newsroom's extraordinary wildfire coverage, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So stick around. What does it take to cover a catastrophe when people reporting it are living through it? After the break, we'll go inside the Spokesman-Review newsroom to learn how its journalists made split-second decisions, verified life-saving information, and documented devastation across their own community. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Walter Hussman. Our family has been in the news business for over 100 years. Journalism includes two parts, reporting the news and providing opinions. But in recent years, there's been too much opinion appearing in news reporting. This has eroded public trust in news reporting to the lowest level of any U.S. institution. To address this, we started a nonprofit, the Center for Integrity in News Reporting.
The Center for Integrity in News Reporting, CFINR, is on a mission to rebuild public trust in journalism, one newsroom and one classroom at a time. We champion the effort to have news organizations and journalism schools create and prominently display their own clear, concise statements of core journalistic values. Learn more by visiting the Center for Integrity and News Reporting site at cfinr.org.
Alex, I got to start with you. You entered neighborhoods where entire blocks had been reduced to foundations. Your reporting described melted tomatoes, children's hopscotch still visible on sidewalks, residents searching the remains of their homes. What did you encounter when you first arrived? And how did you begin turning that overwhelming scene into a story?
Well, I mean, at first, like going out there, being out there, you're not thinking in the moment that everything you're standing on is going to be wiped away by fire. But I think back to this neighborhood in particular. There is a street, it's called Tiffany Avenue, and that entire street's gone now. But before it had wiped out and the fire had destroyed everything, I was in that cul-de-sac and I was looking down on a bluff and I could see flames on this bluff. And there were people, around me looking at it. And I turned to them and I was like, I think we need to go. And I look around me and I'm like, maybe the fire is moving in a different direction. Like maybe this neighborhood will be fine. And then I get in my car and I drive away and these people stop me and they're like, should we evacuate? And I told them yes. And when I came back to that street, I remember thinking I need to go back to that street the next day just to see if it was okay. And the entire street was gone.
Tom, you previously covered the 2023 Gray and Oregon road fires, which we actually covered on this show with some of the reporting done from Hagedon. I remember having them on the program. But that one destroyed 366 homes, and you reported on Avista's subsequent plans for public safety powers shutoff. What did these earlier disasters teach you that helped you with the newsroom's response in 2026? I'm curious because this is your second one in just a couple of years. Isn't that right, sir?
Yeah, I've been at the paper now for 27 years, so we've gone through a cycle of fires. The Gray and Oregon Road fires in 2023 were sort of a dry run, if you will, for this. When we're covering this as a newsroom, it's all hands on deck, and Alex was there that day. Our photographer Tyler Chomslin. They both put themselves in positions where they may or not have followed proper law enforcement rules, but they put themselves at risk to make sure that they could cover these folks who were escaping and to capture that emotion. But as far as the Avista, it kind of was setting the stage for the change. They understood the danger that this kind of fire could take place. But even with those preparations, nobody could understand the scale of what we just went through.
Lindsay, I want to ask you, at one point, 60,000 people were under evacuation orders. More than 14,000 structures were threatened. And you got these maps and road closures and evacuation information. How did your newsroom verify the information and distribute it quickly enough without publishing something that could be putting the readers in greater danger? That's always a consideration, isn't it? You got to verify, got to make sure you're doing this right, correct?
I think in some situations it was verified by our own reporter's eyes, and in others we were patient. We obviously had the news as fast as we could get it, but we also weren't quick to say numbers without verifying them. Especially in big events like this, some things can get muddied depending on which official you're talking to. And so we would cross-reference and question the numbers provided to us at some of these press conferences and just with our individual sources by phone. So there was the sense of urgency to get the information out as soon as possible, but we were also careful to make sure that it was right.
Alex, I read some of your reporting. One resident called the destruction a war zone, but you interviewed people while they were standing where their homes had been only hours earlier. How did you approach someone experiencing that degree of trauma, get the information your audience needs, and still respect the person behind the story?
Yeah, I think I typically go into these situations knowing that nothing I will say is going to make this person feel better. Nothing I can do or say is going to change the outcome. And I think I tell them that up front is that I don't want to be doing it. Like, I know that I have to do that job, but I don't feel happy to be there and doing that. And I think, that gets a lot further with people than approaching them like a robot, because they're still processing what had happened, and being honest and approaching them as a real person instead of approaching them like a reporter changes how they respond. And I think that goes a long way with people when they're dealing with grief. And many of them, honestly, were just still in shock. So some of them were laughing about it. Some of them were crying. Some of them, told us to go away. But that's just because they're grieving. So I don't ever take it personally. But it is difficult a lot of the time to try and understand something when you have not lost what they have. And you have to acknowledge that.
Tom, I want to shift gears for a second, if I may. I did a little checking on you. You report a lot on business in the community, and it sparks the question, when did this story did you do any more deep things into insurance, utilities, housing, local business recovery, dollars and cents? As a business reporter, how do you begin calculating the real economic impact of losing hundreds of homes and community structures?
And you mentioned the Gray and Oregon Road fires. In that sense, We did a lot of reporting of not just the loss, but there was like this secondary shock when people understand that their insurance probably won't cover the cost of replacing their homes. We found for instance, if they had a loss of 200,000, the insurance would give them 200,000 to rebuild their home. If they found any asbestos in the rubble, they were sometimes having to pay $80,000 off the top, so they would only be left with 120,000 to try to rebuild a $200,000 home. All that's still coming in this thing, and so because we knew all those things, it helps us guide the questions going forward now as homeowners are starting to understand now that they're just now this last week getting to many of these places. Before it was just an idea that they'd lost everything. They knew it was gone, but then to put their hands in those ashes and to see the destruction, it's a completely different layer of psychological pain. And the third wave of that's going to be when they realize that there's no way that they're ever going to be made completely whole through our current processes.
Lindsay, within days, authorities arrested a suspect in connection with the Old Trail fire. While the causes of Fairview and Autumn Lane still remains under investigation, during a disaster, rumors must travel almost as quickly as the flames. Did you decide what was solid enough to publish, particularly when residents desperately wanted immediate answers, someone to blame? Was it hard for you? Were you again, I'm going back to that verification when the rumors started to fly.
Yeah, well, this is I have a two-part answer for you. One, we did a story on kind of the rumors and the conspiracy theories that were flying, not to give them validity, but to explain, hey, this is the fact about the situation. Here's what we know, and here's why some of that's likely not true. We were very careful with announcing the arsonist, and Alex can probably talk a little bit about how careful she was. She knew in her gut she had seen this person with her own eyes near the scene of the fire, and there's no way in heck we would have reported that without verification or an arrest or police going on record with us about that.
Alex, you were a witness. You saw the suspect in question.
I did. And that's, I remember thinking in my head, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, because I witnessed, people flag down police and point to this guy and say, he looks weird. And the fire investigator ended up pulling him over on the side of the road, and he walked right past my car because I was stationed at a roadblock, and I wrote down a description of what he looked like. He was wearing a green shirt, he was bald, he had a backpack, he was wearing shorts, and I wrote it down because I was like, I don't know if this is relevant right now because we're focused on evacuating thousands of people, and that was not their priority. But in the moment, I was just like, hey, I'll write it down, why not? And I watched the now suspect give the fire investigator his ID, and the fire investigator turned around and drove off to get back to the fire. And in the days after this, I was really hammering police about telling me if this is a suspect. And the day I called the sheriff on the phone and I said, you need to tell me, if I'm right, because I believe that this guy may be involved somehow because I haven't heard anything about it. And I was calling DNR, I was calling everyone to ask them about it. And then that was the night that they announced his arrest.
Lindsay, kudos to you for taking these stories beyond the written piece. You had digital updates, aerial images, maps, galleries, podcasts. How did you coordinate all of this? And you had this all in front of your paywall, am I right?
Yes, all the wildfire coverage has been outside of the paywall. We, I would just say it's a real team effort. I mean, we also had podcasts that we filmed and put on YouTube, which were free for all. Brian Plonka shot some beautiful video. that's also on our YouTube. And I just feel like I would love to say that this was well coordinated and well planned, but we were literally flying by the seat of our pants every day and just trying to get out as much as we could. I feel like now we have more of a coverage plan going forward, and we're having to like actually plan these things. So it's taking more of a concerted effort, but it kind of just was like every day we're like, we're going to do this, this, and this. I mean, one day we had like, I think 18 stories I counted on the fire alone, which was nuts. And that didn't count our digital video, our photography. That was just stories alone. So
I'm going to do a final question around, and I'm going to do it in this order: Tom, Alex, and then Lindsay. So poor Tom, the others are going to get a chance to prepare, but you got an audience of thousands of news publishing executives, big and small, and disasters happen everywhere. It's not just one part of the country, it's everywhere. What advice would you give after living, and of course, Tom, not just through one, but two, three, whatever, what advice would you give a newsroom now to prepare for when or if something like this may happen in their community?
The one thing that we've always had a pretty good background is we generally have our reporters go to the Department of Natural Resources every year, has a fire training, and it's only about 30 minutes, but what it does is it makes sure that you are aware of what just your standard gear that you should wear: boots, Nomex shirt, pants. And have a place where everybody in the newsroom knows where it is, and everybody in the newsroom knows that there is a senator that fits you. Just that thing alone. And then when it comes to the disaster itself, you have to have a newsroom that's willing to just drop everything and go. You just have to drop everything and go. I wasn't even at the fire, but I was out of town when this occurred. But it pained me to not be there because I'd been there on the front line so many times, and it was very, very reassuring to see that we had people like Alex and Tyler and Amanda out there, because they did a bang up job, and they did exactly what they're supposed to do. They see something, they write it down, they talk to people. Covering news is not that complicated, but you can't do it if you don't go out there.
Alex, same question to you. Advice to news publishers.
I would just say trust your gut and trust your instincts. And I appreciate that my editors trusted me enough to let me go out there and let me do my thing without judgment. And I think we need people who, like Tom said, are willing to drop everything and go. And you have to be scared, and you have to be, a little bit cautious. But I think also at the same time, being fearless and hopeful and intrepid is how you get stuff done. And I think our newsroom did a great job of that. And I think you really have to put yourself out there to be able to know, this is going to impact my community. So I have to sacrifice some of my time and my mental well-being to serve the place that we live.
Lindsay, bring it on home for us, especially since you were running that newsroom then. Advice to other publishers.
Everything they said rings true. I also think there is a level in which you cannot prepare. I don't think there's been anything that's directly affected our newsroom in such a large way. Every single one of us, I believe, has a friend or family member or a next door neighbor who lost their home. And I think just allowing the reporters and the staff to have emotion and go through the grief of what they've seen or has happened to them, and giving them grace is really the only thing you can do in the aftermath of that, because it's pretty impossible to prepare for.
Spokesman-Review journalists Alex Duggan and Tom Klaus, thank you so much. And Lindsay Treffy, managing editor of the Spokesman-Review, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.